She never imagined the man she married, the man who whispered, "I will be a new man," on their wedding night, was living a lie so deep it would shatter her soul. In the silence between vows and betrayal, his truth waited like a loaded gun, ready to destroy everything they thought was real. And when the mask finally fell, love became the most dangerous thing of all. Welcome, everyone, to this emotional roller coaster of love, lies, and redemption. Before we dive in, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Your country, your city, your corner of the world. And don't forget to hit that like button to show some love for more powerful stories like this one. The wedding dress wasn't white anymore. It was red, splattered, torn, and heavy with the weight of what he had done. Dominic Vale stood over the man gasping on the marble floor of his mansion, the scent of gunpowder mixing with the sweet perfume of roses that were meant for his wedding night. "You should have stayed loyal," he said coldly, his voice low, dangerous, and empty. The man tried to speak, but Dominic's silencer whispered the end of his sentence. One more secret buried. One more ghost added to his collection. He wiped his hands on the silk sheet and looked toward the balcony where fireworks painted the night sky. To the world, the Vale wedding was a fairy tale, a billionaire CEO marrying a woman who made him look human. But beneath the champagne and vows was a storm waiting to break. Dominic wasn't celebrating love. He was burying evidence. Hours before the ceremony, one of his lieutenants had betrayed him, sold information to a rival syndicate. The hit had to be clean, fast, silent. No one could ever know. But the universe doesn't trade silence without a price. As he stayed at the city below, his reflection looked back like a stranger. The words he'd spoken at the altar echoed in his mind. "I will be a new man." But the blood drying on his cuffs said otherwise. Across the city, unaware of the violence that had stained her wedding night, Isabella Reyes, his new bride, waited in their penthouse suite, still in her gown, the hem brushing the floor like innocence untouched. She smiled when she heard the door open. "You're late," she teased softly, turning to him. He froze for a second, the metallic scent of the gun still in his lungs. But he forced a smile, the same smile that had fooled the world. "Business," he said simply, loosening his tie. "Business on our wedding night." She laughed lightly, but her eyes searched his. There was something distant in them, something he tried to hide. "Just one last thing to take care of," he said, walking toward her. His hand brushed her cheek gently, tenderly, yet still trembling from the kill. "From now on, everything changes." "You promise?" she whispered. "I will be a new man," he said again, this time quieter, as if saying it could make it true. She kissed him, soft and trusting, and for a moment, he almost believed the lie himself. Outside, a phone buzzed on the counter. A message flashed across the screen. "The girl doesn't know the truth about her brother. Should we tell her?" Dominic's eyes flicked to it, then back to Isabella. His pulse hammered. The past he thought was buried was already clawing its way back. What would you do if you discovered your husband's wealth was built on blood? Comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like this video for more stories that test the limits of love and loyalty. The morning after should have smelled like perfume and sunlight, but in the Vale penthouse, it reeked of smoke and fear. Dominic woke to the faint hum of the city below, the taste of whiskey on his tongue, and the faint trace of blood beneath his nails. Beside him, Isabella slept peacefully, her hand resting on his chest, her face serene. She didn't know that the man she'd married hours ago had executed one of his own men in cold blood before saying, "I do." He slipped from the bed, his bare feet silent on the marble floor. The mirror caught him, a man in silk sheets, but his eyes were war zones. He turned on the shower and let the water burn his skin raw, as if pain could wash sin away. Downstairs, Isabella hummed while making coffee, scrolling through the wedding photos already flooding social media. To the world, they were the perfect couple. Billionaire CEO and humanitarian wife. Beauty and redemption. Love and legacy. But in the shadows of Dominic's empire, word of his midnight execution had already spread. One man dead. One secret less contained. "Morning, Mr. Vale." Isabella smiled as he entered the kitchen. She poured him a cup, her diamond catching the sunlight. "You look like you've fought a war." He smirked. Maybe I did. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. There was something cold in his tone, something that didn't belong to the man who'd sworn love in front of 1,000 guests. Then her phone buzzed. A news alert. Breaking. Sources claim Cross Industries, a company linked to Dominic Vale, has ties to organized crime and money laundering. The room froze. Her gaze lifted, trembling. Dominic, what is this? His jaw clenched. He had rehearsed 1,000 truths, but never this lie. Competitors spreading rumors, he said calmly, reaching for her phone. You know how media works. They'll say anything. But it says your name. She stepped back. Tell me it's not true. It's not what it looks like. Then what is it? She asked, voice cracking. Tell me. His silence stretched like a blade between them. I'm leaving that world, he finally said, low and raw. I'm done with it. I swear to you, I'm trying to be different. Trying isn't the same as being honest, she whispered. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. Instead, she handed him back the phone and turned away. If you want to be a new man, Dominic, start by not treating me like I'm stupid. Her words cut deeper than bullets ever had. He wanted to tell her everything, that her brother's death wasn't an accident, that he had been part of it, that his empire was built on the ashes of people like her. But love has its own cruelty. He couldn't watch her look at him with hatred. Not yet. Not tonight. That evening, the world outside raged. News vans at the gates, cameras flashing, whispers of corruption in the air. Dominic stood in his office, staring at his reflection in the glass. Isabella's silhouette appeared behind him, framed by the doorway. They'll destroy you, she said softly. Maybe I deserve it, he muttered. Do you? She asked. Because I can't tell if you're the victim or the villain in your own story. He turned to face her, the mask slipping for a fraction of a second. Maybe I don't know either. She studied him for a long moment, then walked away, leaving only her perfume and silence behind. When the door shut, Dominic picked up his phone and called his second-in-command. Burn the files, he said. All of them. Even the one about Reyes, the voice asked. Dominic's throat tightened. Especially that one. As the line went dead, he looked toward the wedding photo on his desk. Her smile pure, his faint and forced. You said you wanted the truth, he whispered. But the truth would kill you. And outside, the media painted him as a monster. Inside, the monster was falling in love for the first time. Rain slammed against the windows that night as if the sky itself was angry at Dominic Vale. The city below buzzed with sirens and scandal, every headline screaming his name. MAFIA CEO, blood billionaire, the devil in a suit. He had spent his life commanding fear. Now he was drowning in it. Across the city, Isabella packed her bags with shaking hands. She didn't cry. She just moved in silence, folding away the dreams she'd built with a man she realized she didn't truly know. The diamond ring on her finger felt heavier than lead. When she reached the door, her phone buzzed, Dominic's name flashing across the screen. She hesitated before answering. Don't hang up, his voice said. Calm, controlled. But beneath it, desperation leaked through. What do you want? To explain. Explain what? That my husband might be running a crime syndicate. That the world was right and I was the fool. Isabella, please. I didn't lie about loving you. No, you just lied about everything else. The call ended before he could speak again. Dominic threw the phone across the room, shattering it against the glass wall. For the first time in years, he felt powerless, not against rivals, not against law enforcement, but against love. Meanwhile, chaos brewed within his empire. Rivals smelled blood. Former allies whispered betrayal. And one man, Victor Santoro, his oldest friend turned enemy, was plotting to take everything. Dominic stood before his men in the dim-lit warehouse, the air thick with gasoline and tension. No one touches her, he said coldly. Anyone who goes near my wife dies. One of his lieutenants smirked. Boss, she left you. Maybe she doesn't want your protection. The next second, the man was on the floor, Dominic's gun pressed between his eyes. Maybe you don't want your life, he hissed. He didn't shoot, but the message was clear. The devil was still alive. Across town, Isabella tried to disappear into normalcy, moving back to her late brother's apartment, volunteering at her NGO, pretending not to watch the news. But her heart betrayed her every time Dominic's name appeared on the screen. He was still in her blood, no matter how much she hated it. One evening, a black SUV pulled up outside her building. A single envelope slid under her door. Inside, one photo, a man's body found floating in the harbor. A note underneath, "The war has started. He can't protect you now." Her hands trembled. Without thinking, she called the one person she swore she'd never speak to again. "Dominic," she whispered. Silence. Then his voice, rough, low. "Where are you?" "Someone's watching me." "I told you this would happen. You did this to me," she screamed. "You brought your enemies to my doorstep." "And I'll deal with them," he growled. "Stay where you are. Don't you dare come here." But it was too late. He was already on his way. 20 minutes later, the street outside erupted in chaos, gunfire cracking through the night. Dominic's convoy pulled up, his men exchanging bullets with unseen shooters. He burst through her door, his arm bleeding, his eyes wild. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, scanning the room. "You're insane," she cried. "You can't just show up here with guns blazing. They wanted you dead, Isabella. You think I'd let that happen?" She looked at him. This man, her husband, bleeding on her floor, covered in the scent of violence and sin. And for a brief, horrifying moment, she realized she still loved him. "Why won't you just let me go?" she whispered. His voice broke, soft for the first time. "Because you're the only thing left that makes me want to be better." The sound of sirens grew louder. The police were coming. Dominic turned toward the window, calculating escape routes, when she stepped closer. "Dominic," she said quietly, "if you really love me, stop running. Tell the truth. All of it." He met her gaze, torn between love and fury, between the man he was and the man he promised to be. Then, just before the door burst open with flashing lights and shouting officers, he whispered, "Not yet," and jumped from the balcony into the night. "If you were Isabella, would you help the man who ruined your life or let him burn alone? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to hit like if you're still hooked on this story." The night Dominic Vale vanished from that balcony, the world thought he was dead. News outlets flooded the city with headlines: "Billionaire Mafia boss missing after gunfight." Some said he drowned. Others said he fled. Only Isabella knew better. Monsters don't die easily. 2 weeks later, she found herself living like a shadow, switching hotels, looking over her shoulder, trusting no one. She couldn't sleep. Every creak in the dark made her reach for the pepper spray under her pillow. She hated him, but she hated the silence more. Then, one night, her phone lit up. No caller ID. "Don't scream," came his voice. Calm, controlled, alive. "Dominic," she breathed. "Pack your things. They found you." "What? Who?" A single gunshot cracked through the window. Glass exploded. She hit the floor, heart racing. "Now," he barked. Within minutes, black SUVs screeched to the curb. Dominic burst into the room, gun drawn, blood on his sleeve. "Move," he shouted, grabbing her hand. "I told you to stay out of my life," she screamed as they ran through the back exit. "And I told you I'm not letting you die because of me." They sped through the city, bullets shattering the rear window. Dominic's men returned fire. Sirens wailed behind them. When they finally lost pursuit and drove into the mountains, Isabella sat in stunned silence, adrenaline burning through her veins. The car stopped before a remote villa hidden among pine trees and mist. "Where the hell are we?" she demanded. "Somewhere no one will find us," he replied, stepping out. "You mean a prison?" "Call it what you want," he said, tossing his gun onto the counter. "You're safe here." "Safe?" She laughed bitterly. "With the man who ruined my life." He turned to her, his eyes darker than ever. "You think I wanted this? You think I don't wake up every day wishing I'd never met you? Because maybe then you'd still have a normal life. You don't get to play the victim, Dominic. You built this world." He said nothing. For once, she saw exhaustion crack through his armor. He poured himself a drink, hands trembling slightly. "You don't know what it's like to crawl out of the pit you were born in," he murmured. Violence was the only language I learned. She hesitated, caught between fury and something else. Pity. Then learn a new one. The room went quiet. The storm outside roared, thunder shaking the villa. Over the next few days, they lived like ghosts in the same house. He repaired the security system, made phone calls to men who owed him favors, and slept in a separate room. She cooked in silence, pretending not to notice his wounds, his nightmares, or the way his eyes lingered on her when she wasn't looking. One night, she found him sitting by the fire, staring at an old photo of two boys. One of them, Dominic, no older than 15. "Who's the other kid?" she asked softly. "My brother," he said after a long pause. "He died when we were young. Someone killed him because of a debt my father couldn't pay. That's when I learned power matters more than innocence." "And that's who you became?" she asked quietly. He met her gaze. "That's who I had to become." For a moment, the world softened. The heat of hatred cooled into something fragile and unspoken. Isabella looked at him and saw, not the monster, but the boy who lost everything and built an empire from pain. "I don't forgive you," she said finally, "but I don't think I can hate you the way I want to." He gave a small, bitter smile. "That's worse." Lightning flashed outside. She turned to leave, but stopped at the doorway. "If you really want to be a new man," she said, "then stop running from the old one." When she was gone, Dominic stared into the fire, the reflection of the flames dancing in his eyes. For the first time, he didn't feel invincible. He felt exposed, human. Outside, the storm didn't just rage, it screamed. And deep in the forest beyond the villa, headlights flickered in the distance. The war he'd started was coming for both of them. If you were trapped with the person who destroyed your life, but also saved it, would you stay or escape? The storm passed, but the silence it left behind was worse. For days, Dominic and Isabella lived inside the mountain villa like strangers chained by fate. Every hour carried unspoken tension, anger, guilt, something that felt too much like love. He watched her from a distance, always guarding, never touching. She, in turn, kept her distance, pretending not to care, even though every heartbeat reminded her she wasn't safe, neither from the world nor from him. One night, while Dominic was out securing the perimeter, Isabella wandered into his study. The room was dimly lit, lined with shelves of leather-bound ledgers, documents, and guns locked behind glass. But one drawer was slightly open. She hesitated, then pulled it. Inside, an envelope marked with her brother's name, Gabriel Reyes. Her pulse spiked. She opened it. Photos. Reports. A final execution order stamped with Dominic's old syndicate seal. The words blurred through her tears. "Target eliminated, confirmed by Vale." Her scream broke the silence. The papers scattered like ash. When Dominic rushed in, she was standing there, shaking, holding the file in her trembling hands. "What is this?" she whispered, voice cracking. He froze. His throat went dry. "Isabella, what is this?" she screamed, slamming the papers against his chest. "You killed him." "No," he rasped. "I didn't pull the trigger, but you ordered it." His silence was a confession she didn't want to hear. She stepped back, disgust and heartbreak twisting together. "You told me you wanted to be a new man, Dominic, but you murdered my brother and buried the truth under your money." "I didn't know it was him until it was too late," he said, voice breaking for the first time. "By the time I found out, he was already gone. I've been trying to fix it ever since." "Fix it?" she spat. "You can't fix murder. I tried to protect you from this." "Protect me?" She laughed bitterly through tears. "You married me to ease your guilt." "No," he roared, the sound echoing through the villa. "I married you because I fell in love with you, and that was the biggest mistake I ever made." The air went dead still. His words hung like smoke. He immediately regretted them, but it was too late. Her eyes filled with a pain he couldn't face. She shoved past him, tears streaming, and ran into the storm outside. "Isabella!" he shouted, chasing after her into the darkness. Rain pounded against them, thunder cracking as she stumbled down the muddy slope toward the road. "Stay away from me," she cried. "You don't get to touch me again. You don't get to save me again. Please, just let me explain. Explain, she yelled. Explain how you destroyed my family and then pretended to love me. Explain how every time I kissed you, I was kissing my brother's killer. The words hit him like bullets. He fell to his knees, the rain mixing with tears he didn't know he still had. I never wanted to hurt you, he whispered. I was a monster long before you met me. But I swear, every moment with you made me wish I wasn't. She stopped, just for a moment. Her face twisted with heartbreak. Then maybe you shouldn't have wished, she said coldly. Maybe you should have just stayed the monster. She turned and walked away. Dominic didn't follow this time. He watched her disappear into the storm, the sound of her footsteps fading like the last pulse of hope he'd ever have. Back inside, he stared at the blood-stained papers scattered on the floor. Gabriel's name burned into his vision like a curse. He poured gasoline over the files, lit a match, and watched the flames consume the proof of his sins. You wanted me to be a new man, he murmured to the fire, his voice hollow. But maybe the only way to be new is to burn everything I was. Outside, Isabella found her way to the main road, soaked, shivering, heartbroken. She didn't know where to go, only that she could never go back. Behind her, in the mountains, the villa glowed orange against the storm as Dominic's past went up in flames. 3 months passed, and the empire of Dominic Vale was in ruins. His corporations crumbled under federal investigation, his assets frozen, his men scattering like rats abandoning a sinking ship. The devil in a suit had finally fallen, but not by bullets or betrayal. He destroyed himself. The man who once ruled cities now lived in silence, working his own redemption one bloody step at a time. In a remote countryside outside Naples, Dominic built something new from nothing. A rehabilitation shelter for orphans and victims of organized crime, the kind of lives he had once shattered. He used untraceable funds, sold his cars, burned offshore accounts. Every hammer strike, every sleepless night was his penance. The world thought Dominic Vale was dead. Maybe he was. Across the ocean, Isabella Reyes was alive but hollow. She had returned to her NGO, rebuilding what was left of her brother's foundation. Yet the peace she fought for felt like a lie. Every time she saw a man in a dark suit, her heart skipped. Every time she looked in the mirror, she saw love twisted into pain. One evening, during a charity event in Florence, she was called to speak. Cameras flashed as she took the stage. We can't rewrite the past, she told the crowd, voice steady but soft. But we can choose what kind of people we become after it. The words were meant for others, but they burned in her own chest. After the event, as the guests left, a man stood quietly at the back of the hall. No entourage, no press, just scars and tired eyes that looked like hairs. Isabella froze. The air left her lungs. Dominic. He stepped forward slowly, his hands visible, his posture humble. No arrogance, no menace, just guilt and longing. I wasn't going to come, he said, his voice low, rough. But I heard what you said on stage, and I had to see it for myself. Why? She asked. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but something worse. Hope, because I wanted to see if you were still real. Silence filled the space between them like an open wound. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. You're a wanted man. Not anymore. I turned over everything. Names, accounts, networks. I dismantled it all. I did it for, he stopped himself. For what? She demanded. For the man I said I'd become. Her heart twisted. You think charity and confessions erase blood? No, he said, but it's a start. For the first time, she looked at him, not as the monster who killed her brother, but as the man who had torn down his own empire to make things right. Why are you really here, Dominic? She asked softly. To say goodbye, he murmured. To tell you that I finally did it. I became the man you wanted me to be, even if it's too late for you to care. Her throat tightened. The words she wanted to say, I still care, stuck in her chest like glass. You're right, she said instead. It's too late. He nodded, forcing a small, broken smile. Then at least now, it ends clean. He turned to leave. Dominic, she said suddenly. He stopped. You said once that love was the most dangerous thing in your world, she continued. Maybe it still is. But danger doesn't always mean death. Their eyes met one last time. No hate, no lies, just the weight of everything that had been lost. He left without another word. That night, Isabella couldn't sleep. The man she once called her husband had vanished again. But this time he'd left no trail of blood, no shadow of deceit. Only proof that people can change if pain doesn't kill them first. The next morning, she received a letter. No return address. Inside, a single sentence in his handwriting. Be a good woman, Isabella. One day, be new. She pressed it to her heart and whispered, You already were. The dawn came with gunfire. Dominic woke to the echo of explosions tearing through the valley, the last ghosts of his empire clawing their way back for revenge. He'd known it was coming. When you burn down an empire built on blood, the ashes still bite. Outside, smoke curled into the pale sky. The shelter he'd built, the one that carried the names of the people he'd hurt, was under attack. Children screamed. Staff scattered. And through the chaos, a familiar car skidded to a stop at the gate. Isabella. She had come back. He ran toward her, bullets slicing the air. What are you doing here? He shouted, dragging her behind cover. You shouldn't be here. You think I could just stay away after seeing what you built? She yelled back. You saved all these people, and you still think you deserve to die alone. He looked at her, torn between rage and disbelief. You should have run. So should you, she said. Then the world exploded. A grenade hit the far side of the shelter, flames swallowing the courtyard. Dominic pulled her down as debris rained from the roof. He fired back, dropping one of Santoro's men with a single, precise shot. But there were too many. They were surrounded. Isabella clung to him, her body shaking. Dominic, stop. You can't win this. I'm not trying to win, he growled. I'm trying to end it. He stood, firing through the smoke. Each shot was a confession. Every bullet was an apology. He fought like a man already halfway to hell. Dominic, she screamed, but it was too late. A bullet tore through his shoulder, spinning him into the dirt. Blood pooled fast. He gasped, collapsing against the wall. Isabella crawled to him, pressing her hands over the wound, sobbing. Stay with me, please. His vision blurred, but her face was all he saw. Tell me I did one thing right, he whispered, his breath shallow. You became the man you promised to be, she said through tears. Sirens wailed in the distance. Police, Interpol, the world catching up to the man who had finally stopped running. Dominic closed his eyes. Then it was worth it. He passed out before he could hear the gunfire fade. Hours later, Isabella sat outside the ambulance as medics worked to keep him alive. Reporters swarmed behind police tape. The world was watching the devil bleed for the first time. Is it true? A journalist shouted. He confessed to everything. Isabella looked at the burning shelter. He confessed to more than you'll ever understand. That night, as helicopters lifted Dominic away, she watched from the shadows, praying for a miracle she no longer believed in. But some men don't die. They are reborn in pain. The world called him a monster, but prison made him a man. Dominic Vale woke to concrete walls, iron bars, and the stench of sweat and repentance. His empire was gone. His name, once whispered in fear, now filled tabloids as a cautionary tale. The billionaire who confessed. He had lost everything: money, power, freedom. But in the quiet of his cell, he found something he'd never had before: peace. He spent his days teaching inmates how to read, donating every hidden cent of his fortune to rebuild the shelter that burned. Every letter he received from the outside carried stories of children saved by the very charity that bore his sins. But one letter never came. Isabella. She had vanished again. No phone calls, no visits. Only silence, her final punishment. Yet, every night, as he sat beneath the flickering light, he replayed her voice in his head. You became the man you promised to be. It was both mercy and torment. One rainy afternoon, the warden approached his cell. Vale, he said gruffly, sliding an envelope through the bars. You've got mail. Dominic hesitated before opening it. A single photo fell out, a rebuilt shelter, new walls, new faces, and in the corner, standing among the children, was her, Isabella. She looked radiant, alive, and strong. Behind the photo, a single note: "You did one thing right. Now do the rest." For the first time in years, he smiled. That night, he sat before the parole board. "You've been offered a reduced sentence for cooperation," one officer said. "You can walk out of here tomorrow. But we need a statement, on record." Dominic stayed at the microphone on the table. "I don't want freedom," he said quietly. "I want forgiveness." "That's not part of the deal," the officer replied coldly. "Then neither am I." He stood up and walked out. Outside the hearing room, he looked through the small window that faced the horizon. Freedom meant nothing if it wasn't earned. Weeks later, Isabella finally came. No cameras, no reporters, just her, standing in the visitation room in a simple white dress. The same woman he'd once lied to under candlelight, now looking at him with eyes that saw everything. "You're thinner," she said softly. "You're still beautiful," he replied, voice rough. Silence. Then, she took a breath. "Why didn't you take the deal?" "Because I needed to finish my sentence. I needed to know I wasn't walking free just because I was rich. You could have been out already." "And gone where?" he asked. "You think freedom means anything when the person who gave you a soul won't look at you." Her eyes glistened. "Dominic, I'm not asking for another chance," he said, stepping closer. "I'm asking for closure. To know that the man who destroyed your life finally became the one you deserved." She studied him, searching for the lie she used to always find, but it wasn't there anymore. "You already did," she whispered. "You became that man." He nodded, emotion cracking through his composure. "Then that's enough." As she turned to leave, he called after her. "Isabella, thank you." "For what?" she asked. "For not letting me die the man I used to be." The guards led him back to his cell, but he didn't feel caged anymore. That night, under the hum of the prison lights, Dominic wrote a letter, a confession, a farewell, a promise, and sent it to the foundation in her brother's name. It read, "I will be a new man, even if no one ever sees it. Because love deserves proof, not words." 7 years later, the gates of San Vitor prison opened at dawn. A cold wind swept through the yard as Dominic Vale stepped outside in a plain gray coat. No bodyguards, no cars, no empire. Just a scarred man carrying the weight of his past and the freedom he had finally earned. The guards didn't say a word. They didn't need to. Everyone in that prison knew who he was. The devil who had walked into hell and clawed his way back as a man. He paused on the steps, staring at the horizon where the sun was just beginning to rise. For the first time in decades, he had no destination, no orders, no power. Just peace. And that, he realized, was a most dangerous kind of freedom. A small white envelope waited in his coat pocket, one that had arrived on his last night inside. No name on the front, but the handwriting made his heart stutter. "Isabella." He opened it slowly, breath trembling as he read. "You once said love was a weapon. Maybe it was. But even weapons can be melted down into something that saves. I rebuilt what we lost. It carries your name now. Not the name you wore in blood, but the one you earned in pain. Come see it, if you still believe in being you." He followed the address to a small town on the Italian coast, where the air smelled of salt and forgiveness. Children's laughter echoed down the street, spilling from a newly built center, the Vale Foundation for Second Lives. The sign hit him like a bullet to the soul. He stepped through the gate quietly. The place was full of life. Kids painting, teens reading, women working at the clinic. A young boy ran up and tugged at his sleeve. "Mister, are you here to see Miss Bella?" He froze. Miss Bella. He hadn't heard anyone call her that since before their world burned. She emerged from the doorway, sunlight framing her like a memory he thought he'd never touch again. Time had changed her. Softer around the eyes, stronger in posture, but her presence was the same. Calm, unbreakable, real. For a long moment, neither spoke. The world seemed to still between them. Then she smiled, gentle, cautious, but genuine. "You came. I didn't think you'd want to see me." I wasn't sure I did, she admitted, walking closer. But I knew you would anyway. He gave a small, tired laugh. You always did see through me. She looked at the scar on his jaw, the lines around his eyes. Prison didn't break you. No, he said quietly. It finally built me. Silence hung between them again, but it wasn't the silence of pain. It was peace. Everything here, she said, gesturing to the center, was built from the ashes of what we both lost. The children, the families, they know your story. Not the headlines. The truth. He swallowed hard. And what truth is that? That even monsters can become men, she whispered. His throat tightened. And what about us? She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes glistening. I forgave you years ago. I just wasn't ready to love you again. He nodded, accepting it. Then I'll wait. Even if it takes forever. She smiled faintly. You already did. A light drizzle began to fall, soft as a blessing. She reached out and took his hand, slowly, deliberately. It wasn't passion or desperation this time. It was something deeper. Trust. Together, they walked through the courtyard as children laughed and played around them. One little girl handed Isabella a white rose. Isabella turned, placed it in Dominic's hand, and said softly, "It's time." He looked at her, emotion breaking his composure. Time for what? To stop proving you're a new man, she said. You already are. He drew in a deep breath, the rain mingling with the warmth in his eyes. For years he had chased redemption through blood, fire, and loss. But standing beside the woman whose love had survived the ruins of both their worlds, he finally understood. Redemption wasn't earned in confession or punishment. It was earned in change. As they stood there, the white rose between their hands, the sound of laughter and rain filling the air, Dominic whispered the words that had started it all. Only this time, they were true. I'm a new man. Isabella smiled through quiet tears. Welcome home, Dominic. The camera would fade out on that image. Two souls, once destroyed by lies, reborn in truth. No empire, no revenge, just love that refused to die.